I had so many tech issues trying to get in to play this game. It's not a bad credit on the game, though Vermintide itself and Darktide seemingly, Fat Shark on a record of optimization. It's better than Fallout 76. But once you're in the actual game itself, it does still play good. It's just a bit taxing. Compared to some other hardware, software, high-end stuff, it's going to run smooth like butter, and it's going to look amazing. Even on low settings, it still looked good. I mean, and the flurry of combat and stuff, and it's not as choppy as it seems. That's just my recording software taking a hit for the sake of running the game. I wish I had... There's some smooth moments you can see, but... It's horde combat, it's great ragdolls, it's great gore, it's great effects, massive environments, complex ones at that. And it just... The poor frame here couldn't take it. So many times it just crashed because it ran. It would either be the GPU running out of memory or the CPU running out of memory. Though when it wasn't recording and it was on low settings, I could run it and I could still get a read and still get the general vibe environments. If it wasn't for the timing of real life events and the opening of this window. So, I'm a human. I've got some real life responsibilities, some real life people I connect to and such. This weekend had stuff already planned before the announcement of the beta, or at least the announcement within their YouTube when they said it'd be the 14th to the 16th. I was already going to be gone for the majority of that Friday and that Sunday, on top of having additional workloads, whether it be stuff tied to roll trauma, go listen to it, or other provocations, just work. But you know what I did? I still got in. I still squeezed in those hours. I still squeezed in that time. I still tried to get playthroughs of every class if it wasn't for crashes, timing, and I only, of a whole weekend I got access to. I only had free time to play a total of 6 hours worth. 6 hours which were then plagued by hardware-affected crashes and terrible connection issues. I mean, this was to stress test the connections, and my internet's already not the best, but you're going to see some of this gameplay in the background. Just the feeling, the tone, the music, the characters, the ship, the hub, Hive City, Atama. It's so... Mwah! Let me get this across to you. If you're watching this, you're likely a 40k fan, or already a fan of Vermintide, or just checking out what all the hustle's about. And if it is just what the hustle's about, let me tell you something about 40k. You'll find a timestamp to skip ahead past this summarization, but you can stick around to see my takes on it. 40k, the setting, it's bad. It's not a good time. As in, okay, let me rephrase that. It's not bad for you. It's not that it's a bad time for you, except your wallet. It's an amazing, fucking over-the-top... Everything's garbage. It's the grim darkness of the far future. And it's so awful. It's great. Everything on these grand scales, from the terrible to the mighty, to the honorable, to the blind faith, to the terrible, corrupt, slow, bureaucratic, dying system of the Imperium, to the maniacal orcs. We'll focus on what's in Darktide. The disease spawn ridden of Nurgle, you have the Traitor Guard, you have Algrins, these different abhuman freaks, you have the mutants, you then also have the hive cities themselves built up over centuries, millennia of just massive industrial complexes, a city built on top of itself, the landscape and planet around it, completely desolate from how many resources and output this makes. But it's just that. It's humanity. It's the way the system's functioning. It's the way it's carrying on through the grim darkness of the far future, where there's only war. There's no time for peace. Even down in the Hive City itself, all the prisoner garb. Oh, speaking of which, the one thing I could get footage of, the character creation. This provides just a nice glimpse into the world itself and just the numerous places what you play as the rejects. Because, the Imperium, if you hope tolerance was a value humanity would hold on to in the far future, 40k, Purge the heretic, kill the Xenos, the traitor shall not live. Oh, any form of justice, innocence proves nothing. And that's what you are, a reject. Someone who was going to be killed, slaughtered, imprisoned, forced into slave labor, who knows. But your labor that you've been brought into is to go in on suicide missions to help clear out sections of a corrupted hive city. Of all these themes, of all the art direction, which is amazing and I wish I could show it better, the music. Oh man, the soundtrack for this game. Vermintide had some decent tracks. And it was very much like the skittering, light, sneaky, oh no, this is going bad, or the swarm overwhelming you. But I feel like when they were looking at this, or the composer was looking at this, they looked to the popularity of the other great soundtracks within other 40k games. Namely, you have some stuff from Dawn of War, which is this epic grand scale orchestral on occasion, or, you know, the good thumping of drums and the warlike stance in keeping with the rhythm of battle. But the other one I think they definitely took note of is the other one the community takes note of, and that's the Mechanicus OST.
From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me. I craved the strength and certainty of steel. I aspired to the purity of the blessed machine.
Which might get its own video. The industrial punk, the dubstep, the electronic music, and the pipe organs and choirs thrown on top of that, all of those mixed together. This just grim, dark church, holier than thou, gothic, futuristic aesthetic, industrial punk. It is such a fine mix, and it's so good to be shown within the depths of a hive city. And that's another thing. It's taking advantage of its setting. It's not having you as a Space Marine. You have the Space Marine Adventures, which 40k Space Marine, also a good game, has you playing as one of the heroes of mankind, one of the great Astartes. But then you have other games which are like Dawn of War, which is a lot more like the base game. It's this massive RTS allowing you to field the massive armies themselves. But it's the other games that come to mind. Namely, first and finest example of which is Mechanicus. It is a small, nice snippet, deciding to take a look at a particular part of the 40k universe, and focusing in on that, and fleshing that out, and prioritizing that, and it does wonders. It's not like any of the other titles, because it's focusing on a small bit of the setting. But that small bit is still so grand and vast, and Darktide, I think's doing that pretty well. You could have had the issue where when Space Marine, Orcs, Tyranids, or whatever, I mean, we all assumed Chaos, and Nurgle especially, since they're already about, like, swarm tactics, and they did the same thing in Vermintide too. But it's the taking those snippets. You have the crazed individual psychers, the regular zealots, you have the general veteran and guardsmen, the humble lasgun, which packs quite a punch. And one thing that doesn't get much represented is Ogryns. I mean, on the tabletop and within the Astra Militarum, but they haven't had an update in their model range for a while. I'm heading off from the game at this point. But general theming-wise, it's the fact they've decided to take their focus on this small snippet. It's not a planetary-wide scale. It's all in just this one hive city at the moment and issues on Atoma. It just helps to show the vastness of the setting, that all of these terrible, grand, large-scale things are small in the scale of 40k. And when you focus in on that, on those small little aspects, they get to shine and it gets its own identity in a large setting that might have already had some views upon it. Like, do you want to play some rejects or suicide missions of just general guardsmen? That's the other thing. In Vermintide, you couldn't duplicate. In Darktide, you can, because you are just rejects. You're not individual characters. Though, you still have your voice lines. You can still customize them to an extent, even backstory-wise, which is nice. But it also helps the fact that there aren't individual characters in 40k, or at least in this type of environment on these suicide missions. You have you have millions of worlds to pick from of a populace, and however many rejects within those. People who aren't going to be missed, or are just the best kind of aid would be to sacrifice themselves in the Emperor's duty. Duty, not justice. Duty. Justice is a tricky word. But the comparisons, the voice lines, which you can then customize to have specific lines or specific phrase or specific accents with slightly different personalities, which is great. Another bit of detail or personalization just within the Zealot class itself, or the Veteran class, or the Psyker class, or the Ogryn. And then not to mention the banter between them, and where they got away with the characters are the shipborne characters. The people that come in on the comms telling you what direction you need to take, which I thought, neat, still some personality, but they're just going to be blankly talking to you. But one thing I hopefully did catch in some nicer footage, because it was in between some segments, was my Ogryn character talking directly to someone on the ship, and them talking directly back.
You are quiet, Tech Priest. Maybe too quiet, no?
Ah, very well. I am fluent in all 101 core Benharic cants of the 89th discipline.
Ha, I see why you keep quiet.
Not a general voice line where it's just telling you an order, complaining about what you're doing, which is also great, but a direct conversation between someone on the vessel and the different personalities of these Ogryn. Because that's the thing, it wasn't just my character and that character. There were inbuilt systems and dynamic conversations. It was short, but it was between the two Ogryn characters we had stacked up in this game, the voice lines we picked, and then the Mechanicus, and then the Tech Priest character on board the vessel. Then you have the multiple jaded guardsmen, you have the Psykers talking to each other about crazy stuff, you have the Zealots backing each other up on their stuff, and you have them commenting on each other, the Zealot having an opinion of the Ogryn, or the Psyker, the Veteran also seeing them as a freak, the Ogryn calling the Veteran sir, but pronouncing it suh.
Watch out, sir. Sorry, sir.
It's so good. It's just... I'll be back. I'm gonna collect my thoughts. All right, we're back. You know, some thoughts collected, some things settled. But with some things settled, and namely just talking about the overall vibe, and there's going to be a lot of comparisons to Vermintide. Like I said, this is more along the lines of the Ultra Kill read so far, because we don't have the full game yet. Not even the official release or early access or something. It's the closed beta test. So things are to be a bit jank. But even with that said, again, like the Ultra Kill, this is going to be me telling you just about the game, how great it is. Like, okay. Saying a game is great is fine, but that doesn't mean in all aspects. But through playing it, it's a lot of fun. Going through the various objectives, different levels, the different characters meshing together, the audio lines, and the feeling and impact of the music during the various swarms or fights or objectives. It's good. One thing I was worried about was how they were going to handle ranged units, or how those were going to be balanced, because the crossbows from Winds of Magic were a bit. But I'm happy to say that with their temp health system, I forget what they call it, it's a different thing for each of the characters or classes, if I remember. But essentially this bar, or temp health, or this thing in front of it, or shield-ish, that when you take damage, that takes the damage first, then it goes to your actual health bar, which then you actually need healing supplies and other things like that. But the first bar can be regenerated two ways. Over time by just sticking with your group, or for every melee kill you get. So it's this good vibe of forcing you into melee a bit, also with ammo supplies, but also the frequency of guns. You don't want to just empty it into a regular Poxwalker horde, or just these regular plague spawn. You want to wait till it comes up to the Trader Guard. Those ranged troops I was just talking about. Which, even as the Ogryn, or as the Ogryn especially because I had such a large hitbox, I was paying, in higher difficulties, I was paying attention to cover. On where I was, where are they, sometimes as the veteran after just hearing the noise using my class ability, so they'd be highlighted, and then I would headshot them. I didn't think that ability would come in too much use, but picking out through a crowd or just seeing where they are in a large map or down a hallway after hearing the usual noise warning that's similar like Left 4 Dead or Vermintide. And the zealot of the with the speaking of that recharge, the fact that their ability has it entirely recharge when they activate it. That temp health, so they can charge into combat. The first melee strike is buffed up for a guaranteed crit, and whack! I am so sad I didn't get a power hammer during the very short window I could play, but I've seen gameplay. Oh my god, the power hammer looks so much fun. A lot of the melee, that's the thing. There's also special abilities and features on some of the weapons, like briefly change for an additional strike, or it might need some prep, or it's a fancy parry. It's fun. The charge up the power hammer, the priming it, seeing the arcing electricity on the side. Whack. Oh. It's good. Dialogue is good. We'll see how long that lasts. But so far with the mixed lines, I mean, I've heard repeated lines from the characters within Vermintide as well. And everyone here seems to be having a general vibe, and I think the character slots will be filled by the general character archetypes, but namely the people in the ship. I think that's the angle they're going to try and expand to for the identifiable characters. But yeah, it's a good game. I'm looking forward to it November 30th. Even though I likely won't be able to record it, I'll still be able to play it, just about. And put it this way, the fact that I'm willing to go on the lowest settings just to play this game and still am having a great time and still looks pretty decent if you ask me. Frame's not too bad in most parts. That should say a lot. Now, there's no rating for this, just a read. The vibe. The intent. The feeling. Feeling in you. In me. It's a fun game. So, hope you stick around. Like and subscribe. You know, the usual YouTuber stuff. I do other stuff. You've probably seen it throughout the channel. Spell a day. Anywho, I do these videos as well, and still plan on doing these videos, with other ones planned. Though, as a curse, I don't mention the exact name of what. Because then they don't get done. Anyways, goodbye!